and enlightening, and always out there fighting. The jokes can be quite biting. The MugClub family. The studio's quite homey, and if you hate it, blow me. We got new merch to show thee. The MugClub family.
Mugs, shirts, hats.
So fill that girthy mug up, pick up your shirt from the shop. Watch us as we scale up the MugClub family.
Head over to crowdershop.com to check out all the new designs. Order now and get $5 free, no minimum purchase. Today only. That's crowdershop.com. Spooky. That was a good one. I got good, is it torque?
Traction?
What do you call it? What do you call it? Is it suction power? I don't know. You can comment below. But hey, tomorrow is our annual Halloween Spooktacular. So if you post your Halloween costume, send it to me on Instagram or Twitter. Your mug has to be in the picture. Use the hashtag Spooktacular. You are going to get you're going to get a prize that's bigger than just a swag bag.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it may be a truck. That's right.
Right, we do have that.
So we have a lot to get to today, and I still have a little bit of a cold that's moved into my ears, so everything sounds like womp, 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 womp. But
Cold moved into your ears?
that's how I feel about today's stories. Gavin Newsom, look, you can bring up the rundown here. He's in China. You guys know, he beat up a kid. Okay, that's kind of funny. But I think it's important to contrast his policy, which is very similar to Biden's policy on China versus Donald Trump. There is if you're not talking about taxes, if you're not talking about Drag Queen Story Hour, if you're just talking about the issue of dealing with China and their track record, you have a very, very clear contrast and a choice to make. And that choice is, I leave the choice to you, the people. Then we're going to be talking about the Dagestan airport riot. I don't know, not so much as a riot as, the Dagestanis seeking out Jews to kill.
Yeah, it's different than a riot.
Yeah, a little bit different than a riot. And it brings us to a major point that everywhere across the Muslim world, you have people committing gross acts of, I don't want to say anti-Semitism because that whitewashes it, anti-Jew. Yeah. Anti-Jew, wanting to kill Jews. And we're going to be looking at, is there anywhere in the Islamic world that you would want to live? We're not talking about in the United States where they make a very small minority. Anytime Muslims, Islamists in the world reach a majority and control government, human rights die. That's an important point that I think people need to understand here. We're not just talking about Gaza. We're not just talking about Turkey. We're not just talking about Jordan, Lebanon. We're talking about all of them ever.
Right.
And you can comment below if you can think of a place where that's not the case. Say Iran in the 70s and test my patience. Just give it a decade and they screw up. Then we're also going to get into what we know about Mike Johnson because a lot of people are going to say, hey, who's Mike Johnson?
Right.
Myself included. Yeah. And I do this for a living.
Existed.
I said, who? So comment below. We're going to get into all of these topics. China, the Jews, how you feel about them. Keep it, YouTube friendly, I guess. Gerald, CEO number 2. I just wanted to, hey, hold on a second. Oh, look, it's Riff Raff on CNN.
Oh, my God. I don't even.
What is that?
Time is fleeting.
Very.
Do we have sound? Can you not bring up sound?
Yeah, it's vastly by the Israelis. In coming days, though,
Russia's ambassador to Israel. That's like a guy who started a comb over and gave up midway through. He's like, I wanted a comb over, but I also want to be an emo kid. Gerald, how are you? I'm just sorry. It's very distracting when I have CNN and a guy looks that bizarre.
It's true. I understand. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm fine. Yeah. A little, I just think it's cold.
It's moved to your
It's
ears?
completely out of my sinuses thanks to the clear. It's a spot. They're not
a
spot today, but I use it. It always clears out of my nose and my throat completely, but then it's in my ears. So, what? Speaking of which, I'm not speaking of which, but when you hear this, you guys can hear it. I can't hear anything because of my ears. Don't worry, Yakuza. It's not you.
Thank you.
You know him? You love him? November 9th, 10th, and 11th. He's going to be at Good Nights in Raleigh, North Carolina. You can see all of his other dates at bryancallen.com. And, of course, Off Limits here on Mug Club on Tuesdays. Mr. Callen, how are you?
I'm fine, my friend. My ears are not full of mucus.
Didn't it used to be
yours.
Charlie Goodnights?
It was Charlie Goodnights, and they changed it to Goodnights. So I'm glad you cleared that up.
Did Charlie die?
People would be looking for Charlie, and they're not. It's Put that in your ways.
Hey, good night. I thought you're supposed to be a Jack in the Box. My name is Charlie.
It's an awkward name. It's like Ruth's Chris Steakhouse.
Yeah.
Hey, make up your mind.
I know. Not to be confused with Ruth's Tits Strip Club.
Yeah.
Whoa,
but the
whoa,
good news
whoa.
is my comedy's a lot like a steak, huh? Juicy. What?
Overcooked?
You mean it's more like...
Oh, come on, Gerald.
It's like an early aughts
Come on.
pair of sweatpants with that written across.
Just, I mean, you know.
When
the
people
rear.
say that about my comedy, I get into karate.
Oh, yeah, I
Oh,
get it.
really?
Yeah,
He
I'll
goes
use
off
karate.
limits. Hey, by the way, if you're watching on YouTube, of course, you know we have a partnership with Rumble. Mug Club is Rumble. Rumble is Mug Club. But if you're still watching on YouTube, at some point today, you'll likely see this. That means we're not going to self-censor and just, you should watch it on Rumble anyway.
That probably smelled like, if you could smell it, it's coffee beans on fire. That probably smells pretty good.
Oh, well, we turned on the heat today because it got cold, and I was like, did someone burn their hair?
I know. First time you turn on the heat, you're like, oh, I'm burning this place down, aren't
Somebody
I?
burn their hair.
The first time you smell burned hair, you never forget it.
Never.
Yeah.
I was reading next to a lamp, and this was before, this is an old school incandescent.
Yeah.
And I just went, what? And then I noticed smoke, and I burned a hole through my
Really?
Yeah.
That's why I use Nair.
Really?
Instead of a lighter when I want to take my chest fur down.
Well,
Just for.
Yeah.
I wasn't saying I used a lighter deliberately. I don't think anyone actually does that.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's more of a fetish. Hey,
Right.
speaking of, I guess let's say, dumb things. Here is a black kid. Sorry, I want to be respectful. This is a criminal of color, a future lifetime incarcerated lowlife
Doctor.
of color. Yes,
Lawyer.
future Pratt and Whitney engineer of color. So here's remember that black kid who sucker punched the guy in the park?
Yeah.
And it went viral. He was playing the knockout game. Yeah.
And they failed.
Well, the problem is, people were really upset about it. But more importantly, you don't always remember how it affects real folks.
Mm-hmm.
He played the knockout game. People were upset. Here's said child of color upset about people being upset.
19-year-old Alfred Lewis spoke with me about how he feels about it now.
I just made a mistake, and everybody makes mistakes.
This is the video in question, first shared with KHOU 11 via the Nextdoor app. In it, you can clearly see Lewis striking a man in the head from behind.
I see him making
before
a
he turns
mistake.
around in shock.
I know, from
Yeah.
the video, all you see is, the bad part about it. But, what people didn't see was that I shook his hand after, and I gave the man a hug.
How can we miss
That
that?
is something we cannot verify.
That's-
Nor can we confirm that another man
He does to another
seen in
guy.
the video getting punched and grabbed, later left on good terms, according to Lewis.
I really didn't expect for it to just go so left,
So you made a mistake with the punch, son, but what about the poorly attempted suplex? I mean, I forgot you was perfect.
Yeah, but sometimes
I
when you
forgot
like...
you never made a mistake. We was cool. He was cool. Why are you not? Why aren't you cool? Because you punched a random man for no reason and tried to suplex him into the concrete? It's a race thing.
You could
But
have.
sometimes when you like somebody in the playground, you hit them first.
When you're 4.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes, we
I
hurt the
think
ones
you-
we love.
Yes,
we hurt the
grow out.
ones we love.
We commit wanton violence
Yeah.
They didn't see
against
the,
strangers,
They didn't
which
see
means
the
we love
good
them.
part. They didn't see the good part of my haymaker, my random haymaker.
That's what happens when you are raised with entitlement and you can do no wrong from birth. What people don't see is I shook his hand. Okay, that's less the headline than you punched an old man at random in the face. As far as I'm concerned, people like this deserve attempted murder.
I was about to say.
You have any idea how many times people hit their head in the concrete?
That's exactly right. We've had video of that where a guy, he got hit with a skateboard, hit his head on the concrete. Now he can't walk or he can't function. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was terrible. If he had landed the blow from behind and actually knocked the guy out face first into the pavement, I'm sorry. You know what I did?
Yeah, well, that would be the part that the media would show you.
Yeah, right.
What they didn't show you was afterwards, I sent the mother Tiff's treats.
See, I feel like
did.
you're.
I Sherry's berries up in that bitch, but they don't show you that.
Right.
Yeah, but why is Steven's impression of a 40-year-old black man who's actually, yeah,
Oh, I forgot.
selling
Big
you a
scary black
car?
man.
It's a good car, I tell you that. It's like, hey, hold on,
No,
Steven.
yours is an early 20th century like slave, early 19th century slave.
Okay, I'm not going to get into that.
Yes, I'll play the knockout game, sir. I do try to punch him with a left hook, boss.
I reject that.
You're one of the crows from Dumbo.
Hey, you know what? This is one of the what's crazy is when you go and look at the reactions is the racial divide. Now, the vast majority of black people are like, this kid is a dumbass. But there are enough that it's alarming going, oh, man, it's just differences in culture.
No, it's
well, then that's a bad culture. I love the victim response. The media didn't show you that we was cool after. Yeah, maybe he acted like he was cool because he was terrified from the violent assault.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and also maybe he got caught, and that's why he didn't see the good part.
Yeah.
Because I got behind him. I did get behind him, and I locked my arms, and I dry humped him a little bit as he kept walking.
Yeah.
And then I shook his hand.
It would be great if he tries that on some Eastern European wrestler
Oh, my
who
God.
reverses the suplex and sends him for it's like, man, why you got to do that, though?
Yeah. The guy, I didn't see his chin strap beard and no mustache. Uh-oh.
I should have known by the Adidas tracksuit and gold chain. And he had his name on the back, Yanko. It said Yanko. I've learned my lesson not to try and suplex Yanko.
Yanko.
What is this game? You play Americans. All right. Okay. Anyways, you guys can. I just find it so fun. I thought the story was done.
I did too.
And people reacted, and then he was upset. Like, just go away. Yeah. This is one of those just apologize, period. Now, I'm sorry, but no. You're about to make a mistake.
No, but
just stop. I'm sorry. Okay. Anything that you speak, anything you utter after the words "I'm sorry" is a mistake.
It would just make this worse.
Must be nice to have such privilege. Okay, let's go with that. All right. Remember Mike Pence?
Yeah.
So he announced that he's pulling out of the presidential race.
Good. Pence is the first major candidate to leave the race, which continues to be dominated by his former boss, Donald Trump. This comes after his campaign for the White House struggled to raise money or gain traction in the polls.
Now, the mission control can bring this up for me. I'm pretty sure that he actually performed more poorly than any former vice presidential candidate since Dan Quayle. I know what you're thinking, but in 2000. When Quayle ran in 2000, Mike Pence did worse.
Well, after the Quayle name
he did worse than Quayle in 2000.
Well, and just to be clear, I think that's kind of a misleading intro by the reporter. The first major candidate to drop out, I would not consider him major.
Yeah, exactly.
Probably with like 2%.
You must be at least this high to run for office.
He was worried he wasn't even going to make the next debate. He wouldn't clear the hurdles that were basically put in to keep Chris Christie out.
And he had a great one-liner. He's like, I have that jerk store line. So in honor of Pence's exit, we give him, this is actually rare, we've never done this,
rare,
second edition, because we did it before he ran, predicting that, of course, he would lose. This is a second edition of Time to Close.
Bias against minorities is a great insult to the men and women who serve in law enforcement.
Remember $2 a gallon gas? I do. And then Joe Biden became president of the United States and launched his war on energy.
Time to close. Endings and beginnings are ending.
Tens of billions of U.S. tax dollars don't have enough tanks. I think it's a fair question to ask, like, where's the concern for the United States in that?
Well, it's not my concern. My wife isn't a member of the teachers union, but I got to admit I've been sleeping with a teacher for 38 years. And so full disclosure.
The time has come for our European partners to withdraw from the Iran nuclear deal and join with us as we bring the economic and diplomatic pressure necessary to give the Iranian people, the region, and the world the peace, security, and freedom they deserve.
I know that it's time for things to close. I know that it's time for things to close.
Yeah.
You won't be missed.
Yeah, that clip brought to you by Charisma Vacuum. The black hole of charisma, ladies and gentlemen.
The cancer of charm.
He's a decent man, but God.
Yeah, he's just terrible at this game.
The next time I need white noise or more of that clip about Mike Pence giving a speech.
Oh, there's nothing worse than waiting for an applause break.
I love it.
And you can see on his face that he still has more speech and he wants to check out.
Amazing.
That was my best material.
Oh, man. That was my A material. He's looking down at his C material. He's like, son of a bitch.
It's going to be a long one.
Then he paused. He knew it wasn't going to go. I admit, I'm sleeping with it. Never mind.
Sleeping with it. Yeah. I've been sleeping with a teacher. Damn it.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much.
I'm going to go.
Enjoy your fruit compo. I'll be here all weekend.
Speaking of someone who's also very cringy, and looks like they're out of central casting but has nothing to offer. Okay. I want to talk about not only Gavin Newsom. First off, let me ask you, and we asked this a long time ago, a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
Do you think that Biden is going to be the candidate? Nope. Do you think he's going to be the candidate for the Democratic Party? Or do you think that it will be someone else? Do you think it will be Gavin Newsom? A lot of people think that. I know Patrick Bet-David thinks it will be Gavin Newsom. I know Gerald does.
I made that call before Patrick Bet-David, I think.
Okay, look. Come on. Now, Gerald says,
be honest,
all right,
Patrick,
look.
be honest.
He's going to try and say that he said it before me. Let me put it to you that way. All right. Gerald, right, he's a guy who says, okay, I predicted it first. But if you look at it, he has a 60% chance of predicting it first. Okay, I have a 70% chance. But then of my 70%, I use 20, he only uses 10. That means I predicted it first. Gerald is a guy with small biceps. I have the biggest biceps. Okay?
You do have big biceps.
I put it to you that way. Okay. So Gavin Newsom. Here's the thing. He has a different coat of paint. He's not very different from Joe Biden.
No.
As a matter of policy, certainly as it relates to China. And this is where we have a very, very stark contrast. I mean, we've had 8 years of Obama, 3 years of Donald Trump, really. We'll have had 4 years of Biden. And you'll get to see the difference in the economy. You'll get to see the difference in unrest internationally. Mm-hmm. But I also think it's important to see the difference in our posturing as we go into really the new, it's not new, but the technological age, really, that's an arms race right now. And China is a big problem, some people would argue. So Gavin Newsom is, I guess he just emerged, but not really. It seems like he might be running. Here's a clip that maybe hints at it, and we'll get into it.
This is a guy, look, I mean, is he going to challenge Joe Biden in a primary? Probably not. But it's hard to imagine this isn't somebody who's sort of waiting and watching and wants to be available on deck if sometime in the next year Joe Biden isn't running.
Okay, so he has the second best odds of winning the Democratic nomination. There are a bunch of headlines out there speculating that he might run. He was pressed on the question last month, and he kind of gave an answer. Yeah. But then if you understand what he's doing traveling abroad in China, it's one of those, how often have we heard, I'm not running until they run. So this is from about a month ago or within the last month.
I think we need to move past this notion that he's not going to run. President Biden is going to run, and looking forward to getting him reelected. I think there's been so much wallowing in the last few months and hand-wringing in this respect, but we're gearing up for the campaign. We're looking forward to it.
But you hear these calls privately. What do you tell these donors who are wallowing in this?
Time to move on. Let's go.
There's so many pauses. The only good thing about that interview, I think that was Chuck Todd's last or very close to last interview before he signed off. Good. Was replaced.
Then he probably got a show on HBO Max.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I think Newsom is going to run, not this time because California is too much of a liability. Mm-hmm. But this is kind of how you set up your campaign from 4 years from now.
Yeah.
You kind of stick your head out and you're like, hello, I'm just here. Look, I'm going to visit China.
I think it's more. I think it's more than that. Like some of his behavior, like he went to the RNC.
He went to the debate, the Republican debate.
Yeah, he tried to debate. What was it, Vivek? DeSantis, I think.
DeSantis. He took some shots at Vivek. He's publicly attacked governors like Abbott, which by the way is in poor taste because he's a wheelchair guy.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, non-wheelchair guys shouldn't attack wheelchair guys.
You don't punch down.
He's going after DeSantis as well, and he's been trying to do some political sort of staging. Like he vetoed the trans kid custody bill that we talked about. He's been doing this media blitz
for him.
Yeah. So I definitely think that he's in the mix. I think if nothing else, he's probably planning on a cabinet position.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are a number of things that he could do. But look, Bryan, to your point, when people look at him and go, oh, he's just preparing for whenever Biden is done in 28, I'm like, this is too early for that.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, he's doing like if he was doing a handful of things over the course of a year, fine. He's doing way too many things back to back to back to back to back to tell us like, hey, I'm trying to do something bigger than just in.
Well, for him, big. And I don't know if you know this, but everything is bigger in China.
No,
it's the opposite.
Is that what they?
Yeah. Okay. Nothing's bigger in China. I mean, the land mass is very large.
Yeah.
It's the oppression. It keeps the people.
Which is maybe why
The
they're not.
oppression is bigger.
Maybe the Chinese people are not as tiny as they seem. It's just it's the scale.
Yeah.
They look tiny in this large land. No, they're also very tiny.
They are. Yeah.
But there's like 20 billion of them, so it would just be like World War Z. If there was a world war, they'd just be throwing bodies.
Yeah.
So Newsom recently, which is not typical of just a governor of an active governor, visited China. Xi Jinping, other CCP leaders. We have a clip.
Oh, there we go. Nice pick. Nice pick.
Bam, bam, bam.
I got you. Tackle it. Basketball's tackle.
Sorry, that was him being creepy and harming a Chinese child on a basketball court. Now, it's obviously knocked the kid by accident, and he was trying to soften it. But if they were playing by their own rules, you know, patting a Chinese kid on the ass who was likely a prisoner of the government 3 times wouldn't go over very well.
It was the small of his back, guys.
Yeah,
Seriously.
no, it was really.
It was not the small of his back.
Yeah.
It was all thigh.
Yeah,
and if that were Donald Trump, he'd hit him. You know, go get up. He'd pull a great Santini. You gonna cry? Huh? Cry.
It's an obvious charge as well.
I apologize for the wrong clip, but it's fun for me. Here's the right one.
Newsom arrived to China on Monday, visiting several major cities and provinces. Among the stops, a tour of an electric bus depot in Shenzhen and a visit to the Great Wall of China.
Yeah, that's a photo op.
That's
not a photo op. Him on a Chinese bus.
He inspected the bus line.
And other officials in Beijing.
Buses,
Newsom's office says the discussion focused on climate change and economic ties between China and California.
And by the way, just to note, American reporters, they were not allowed in the meeting. At all.
Yeah.
So let me give you a recap of what he did on his visit and then kind of show you the concerns that I would have of Newsom, but also Biden with China. That's something that's sort of being overlooked right now because of the conflict with Israel and Hamas. So what did he do? He discussed climate change with Chinese
Thank
leaders.
God, that'll cool the planet. That'll cool the planet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And what the Chinese, of course, Xi Jinping, he wrote down notes and then immediately threw them out.
Yeah. Shred these.
I was going to say, the Chinese Politburo isn't like, listen, guys, we got a visit from the California governor. Good guy. And I feel like he inspected our bus lines, played basketball with the kids, and let's stop.
Yeah.
Let's practice fair trade practice and maybe not spy on them as much.
Yeah. Hey, we were talking with Gavin Newsom. Maybe we shouldn't burn body of Uyghur for energy.
No.
No more burning body. Yeah. Go back to coal, baby step. That maybe clean coal.
Less coal.
And, well, we still burn body. Recycle, burn body. He visited a Tesla factory in Shanghai. You saw him there on the bus, but he also rode some high-speed trains. So that's impressive. There you go.
Thank God. There you go. That's not safe. That's not safe.
For people on audio, it's worse than you think. Now, and if you're not subscribed on audio, do consider, Spotify, Apple, Google, Stitcher, wherever you listen to audio podcasts, head on over there because that also helps with the algorithm there. So I don't know if you have that tool. No? All right.
No.
So we have a question. Why did Gavin Newsom go to China? All right. Well, we kind of have some answers. He told CNN when talking about China that, quote, divorce is not an option when speaking of the economic relationship between the United States and China. And he said that the U.S. and China were, quote, interdependent. Now, let me give you some First off, California needs Chinese money, right? Yeah. They need it for investment of, the viewership of Hollywood films.
Oh, yeah.
You look at, you wonder why there's Fast and Furious 19. Yeah. Because they're very big in China.
Exactly.
Which I hate them for more than just about anything else.
Yeah. Or the Meg 2.
They've ruined art.
I know.
Like, do we really need the Meg 2?
No.
They had to change Red Dawn, so it's John Cena apologizing, or John Cena was apologizing to China for acknowledging Taiwan as a place.
Oh, 100%. He would not work. Richard Gere, they say, stopped being a movie star because he made that speech back in the 90s about Tibet.
Yeah.
And they were like, we'll see you later, dude.
Oh.
How do you feel about gerbils?
Yeah, well, No, Stallone made that up. So they're also huge buyers, the Chinese, of major buyers of California real estate, right?
Whoops.
They also need China for their domestic market, companies like Apple. California is very interdependent on China. Okay. Also, I'm not a complete isolationist when we're talking about trade internationally. The issue is that we have been engaging in trade with China where it has not been fair.
Right.
It has not been an equitable arrangement. And believe me, I know, for example, there's no place to get our mugs made in the United States. There's not an American company that can make these mugs. So we have it hand-etched, hand-painted in the United States. Sometimes there are supply issues. So I don't believe in punishing American businesses for needing supplies that cannot come from the United States. That being said, there are a lot of companies out there like Apple, insert whatever, Nike, insert whatever factory of the day. And some of them I get are Bangladesh and some of them are other places, Vietnam, but a lot of them are in China, where they simply want to cut costs and use slave labor. California is one of the worst offenders if you look at the companies who benefit from this. Okay. And by the way, you can join MugClub, letoscutter.com/MugClub, and you get Bryan's show on Tuesday. You get Nick DiPaolo every day, 5 p.m. You get a full extra hour of show. Alex Jones, Guns and Gear, Hodge Twins. Okay, speaking of the Tesla, now I have Patrick Bet David.
There you go.
Okay, all right. So let me break it down for you. Okay, so speaking of the Tesla factory, right? We have a Tesla factory. I want to make cars. Okay, so I say, I have to make cars. I want to make the best cars, but I have to cut costs, right? If it's 60% Tesla, it's 60% lithium batteries. I need 40% nickel. Then I need 20% of cadmium. Guess what? I'm going to China.
It makes sense. Yeah. Patrick says it, and you're like,
that's why I put it to you that way. So the Tesla factory in China is interesting because Newsom made these comments. He said, the advantages here are self-evident in terms of supply chains. It is a benefit to both countries and certainly to the state of California.
Huh, you mean the car company that left your state because of your crippling regulations and had to come to Texas?
Not just the car company, the electric car company for which you provided additional financial incentives. If you can't make an electric car company work in California, you cannot make it work.
Can't be done.
Oh, wait, hold on a second. That's right. You guys are hypocrites. It's just about money. So it's just interesting to me that the guy who did more for the electric car than anyone in modern history had to leave the eco-friendly state of California.
Right.
So here he is saying that this is a good thing, the supply chain issues. And I also was going, wait, hold on a second. Don't they have factories in the United States? Tesla? Mm-hmm. So that's a perfect example of a company that doesn't need to be in China. Gavin Newsom is saying it's better for us if part of it is in China than in California. The opposite of America first. This is right in line with, of course, whether he's the candidate or not, Biden, Newsom, completely interchangeable. They're soft on China policies.
I've said we are for de-risking, not decoupling with China. We will push back on aggression and intimidation and defend the rules of the road, from freedom of navigation to overflight to level economic playing field that have helped safeguard security.
He always looks like he's looking into the sun.
Yes, just that, it's like a bad Clint Eastwood.
He's staring into hell
on our common efforts.
And much
Open
of
your
it
eyes.
is uncontroversial, should thrive, and it would really be disastrous to try to decouple from China.
Were you about to say something there, Joe?
There's a lot of things that I was about to say. I just hate that clip from Joe Biden makes us look like one of the weakest countries on the planet. And when you're talking about China, I understand the decoupling comments. Like, we have to use them for some things. I get it. Of course. But at the same time, you have to understand that these guys will never play by any international rules that do not benefit them. They do not care what you think. Yep. They know their position right now, and the more that you give them strength, the more they're going to do that. The more you take that away from them, the more they're like, well, hold on, let's talk about this.
Yes.
And that's not what we've been doing with Biden or anybody else from the Democrats.
Yeah, well, our entire lives, my entire life growing up, everyone who wanted to fancy themselves an economist would say, well, you know, the future is China. It's all
exactly.
Except for really 3 years pre-COVID.
Yeah.
When Donald Trump was president. People going, oh, maybe they are a paper tiger.
Yeah.
Wait a second. Maybe we don't have to kowtow to them. It's not, I have no problem with another country doing well. Honestly, I have a problem with a communist nation stealing from the United States while subjugating their own people. We need to be honest about that.
Yeah.
You can't bitch about violations of human rights, for example, in Gaza on behalf of Israel, and say that, our relationship with China is really important.
Yeah, well, that's the problem that I had with the NBA and with Nike and with Apple was that they were doing those things in the United States. They were complaining about human rights abuses. They were trying to jump on every woke thing that they possibly could, and then turning a blind eye to what was happening in China, where their products are being made or where their services are being sold or where people were watching their games. For crying out loud, people couldn't even have signs here in the United States criticizing China.
But it took
when we have free speech.
It took a long time to get all that stuff online. That symbiotic relationship between America and the United States and China is decades in the making. So getting off that is going to take a little time. I feel like politicians are just buying time.
Yeah.
Like China has so many problems, not just a demographic problem, but entrepreneurs and people are leaving China. Like Hong Kong is paying people to have children. They're literally saying, we'll give you $2,500 for every kid you have, and you'll get an apartment faster.
Which is not a bad deal.
Nah.
It's not.
Which just tells me how unattractive women must be in Hong Kong. We'll pay you to bang. What? We'll pay you to bang. You bang. Go bang, bang, bang. I give you money.
Bring receipt.
I bang her. Give me no. American girl. I bang.
She bangs.
Swedish. I'll take Ukraine. I'm sure the women are beautiful in Hong Kong.
That's right.
My point is you shouldn't have to pay men to have sex with them. So let's contrast that with whether you like him, hate him. I think, if nothing else, Donald Trump was pretty clear as to his stance on China.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the reaction is very simple. China has been taking advantage of the United States for many, many years. I'm not just talking about during the Obama administration.
Why do you keep using this? A lot of people say it's racist.
It's not racist at all. No, not at all. It comes from China. That's why. It comes from China.
2 decades later, this theory has been tested and proven completely wrong. Not only has China declined to adopt promised reforms, it has embraced an economic model dependent on massive market barriers, heavy state subsidies, currency manipulation, product dumping, forced technology transfers, and the theft of intellectual property, and also trade secrets on a grand scale.
He needs more orange around the eyes.
Also, they built a trap one time. My fingers couldn't take them out. The trickery. I didn't until they said use your thumbs and you push it out. But why make a trap like that? There's no purpose. Purposeless Chinese trap. So Donald Trump,
a purposeless Chinese trap.
That's what it is. That's what. Listen, folks. A lot of people say, I would never say this. It's just a purposeless Chinese trap. It's also like that thing you grab from Dollar Tree where you keep grab, but it keeps slipping out of your hands. There's no way to get a grip.
I'm in a trap. Why? There's no purpose.
I would imagine that Donald Trump is the kind of guy who hates practical jokes.
And just dissects them.
Yeah.
Why would you do this?
Banana peel again?
Yes. Why is your hand electrical? You have a buzzer. Oh, we're all laughing. What a great joke. Are you in the 3rd grade?
Whoopee cushions.
He laughs.
He said that to an 8-year-old, so.
So this is the contrast here, is you have an entire party who is not just saying, hey, we need to be realistic about our relationship with China. They want to increase our codependency with China.
Yeah.
To a degree that is alarming. You have Gavin Newsom right now. He wants to increase his national profile, and so he's going to China, which just seems a little bit weird. He's courting Chinese money. He's basically the Chinese candidate, and I would say the same thing about Joe Biden. Meanwhile, China taking a little bit of a different tack as it relates to the United States.
Mm-hmm. 要坚决纠正干涉中国内政的、破坏中国核心利益的一切行为，特别是在涉及到台海问题、南海问题等等涉及到中国核心利益这方面立即纠正，并且保证今后不再出现干涉中国内政、破坏中国核心利益的行为。只有这样
中美两国两军的这个关系才能够正常发展。
So basically, for people who are listening on audio who aren't watching this, he's talking about complete independence for China, not being reliant on the United States, not allowing for American interference. Again, they don't view nationalism as a racist term there. They just view it as being a good Chinese citizen. And it's also how you know that their media is entirely government propaganda, because no reporter who looks like that would be allowed in American media. He looks like a children's doll who was given a haircut. Can we bring up a... Yes.
There you go. Yeah.
He's just like, kill me, please.
Cut it like a child.
When you can't make CNN.
Make like a child and cut my hair.
But people are forgetting about the Chinese. The Chinese conflict here. They're forgetting about, and this, by the way, this lurks behind all of it. When you look at Putin and you look at what he's talking about, when you look at, these meetings with Hamas representatives, if you're talking about Russia, you see how that relationship is cozying up far more than it used to be, China and Russia, and you see how everyone is discussed. Well, everyone used to say that China was going to be the next great superpower. Donald Trump said absolutely not, and we said, I guess not. Now the Democrats they want you to act like that was just a skip in the record. No, they're going to be the world's next big superpower, so we might as well be on board with it.
Yeah, exactly. And look, there are a lot of indicators right now that China is not going to continue to rise in power. And people just keep overlooking that. And I don't know why. That would be a good thing for the world if all of a sudden China is diminished in power and standing. But the United States current administration keeps doing things to bolster their standing, to keep pushing other people into their arms, whether they want to be or not. China and Russia are not natural friends. They have no military alliance right now. What is probably going to happen is China is going to be friends with them just so that they can take their resources from Russia. And Russia can't do anything to stop China when they want to do that.
Right.
China is playing 8D chess, and right now Joe Biden's playing checkers. And this is going to get us into a lot of trouble, especially if a Democrat somehow steals the election again and ends up in office in 24. It's just going to be more of the
that's
same.
right. You're allowed to question election results.
We are now. I wouldn't. You
guys don't need to hit the YouTube dump button.
I wouldn't get us a strike. I mean, I would, but I wouldn't.
So many strikes.
So,
all right.
I like so many strikes.
They're fun. So, by the way, hey, can I give just a clarification? It's a little worse than you thought. $8,000 cash equivalent gift for each of the first two children in Hong Kong. That's what parents get. Not $2,500. $8,000
per child.
American.
Per child.
So up 16,000.
Up to 2. Yeah. So maybe once you get to 3, they don't really care. But
yeah, in California, that pays for your first 2 months.
Yeah, exactly.
Think about that. There are probably people paying that much for a high-end prostitute in Nevada somewhere. They're going to pay you to have sex with your own wife.
Or someone else.
Or someone.
They just need a baby.
Yeah, they don't care.
As long as it's not a Uyghur.
Yes.
Well,
I'm just saying.
It's on the questionnaire.
People want to bitch about civil rights in the United States. Hey, these children can't take puberty blockers at 6 years old. Meanwhile, you get imprisoned in China if you're a Uyghur who won't sell cigarettes at your bodega.
That's true.
Okay.
Well, you just have to video the sex to prove it, though. So
do you?
No, I'm just kidding.
Let's think about how would they confirm it.
Market,
have to do is there's like a Hong Kong Maury?
Yeah.
Ching Wang?
How do you think they pay for it?
You
they sell
are the father. Oh, no. Wait, I get child support? I get money. Okay, yay!
I think I'm going to make a prediction. I think China's going to have to import young people to support their old people and their economy, and those young people are going to come from
India.
Africa and India.
Yeah,
and
except the Chinese people are very racist. So
well,
they will not like that.
But you know what? When that gets into the gene pool, it's hard to stop. People do mingle. When Big Brother isn't watching, I'm just saying, be ready, because I'm sorry, but Black and Chinese makes for very good looking.
They do make for very good.
Really?
Very good.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Ah,
yes.
Okay.
It's a beautiful
no
combo.
$6,000.
You guys obviously have
no $6,000 credit needed.
None.
No. Say no more.
That's what I'm saying.
All right.
Serve my country.
Let's move on to another country before we get to Mike Johnson. Dagestan. I know what you're thinking. There are some wrestlers from there. Pretty much it. That's their export.
That and hate.
Yes. That's the only two things they have contributed to the world. Now, this is important to note. We've talked about this before if you go back to the Quran Challenge. And Dagestan is interesting because it's not necessarily what you think of when you think of the Islamic world. You can't judge the progression of Islam by minorities in the United States or in Canada, for example, where they are a minority of the citizenship. You kind of have to judge Islam as far as its performance historically when the nation is a majority Islamist and they gain control of the government. No, maybe you can name to me any place on earth that is a Muslim-run government that does not violate human and civil rights to a degree that would be abhorrent here in the United States? Comment below if you can think of one. Because that's what brings us to something that is not all that surprising to people in places like Dagestan, but in the United States, you might say, oh, I never knew this. So an angry mob of Muslims in Dagestan, Russia, they formed, I guess you would call it, a lynch mob, chain gang?
That's exactly right, yeah.
Looking for, and this isn't just a protest, they were actually seeking out an alleged flight of Jews from Israel to try and, well, in their own words, kill them.
Стойте здесь! Азиза позови! Аллаху Акбар!
Какой целью шел, братишка?
Я за еврейцами.
За еврейцами?
Я тоже за еврейцами.
These are children listening on audio. Came for the Jews to kill them. What will you kill them with? A knife.
Ты зачем сюда пришел?
А?
Ты зачем? Из чего? Ты камни кидал там?
Нет.
За еврейцами, да, вы пришли?
Да.
Все, тигры здесь. До утра здесь стойте, поняли?
Хорошо.
Все, давай.
Now, that terminal is still safer than that of Spirit Airlines here in Texas. 60 people were arrested in the, let's not call it riot, let's call it attempted murder of Jews. Used to be if you wanted to kill Jews in an airport, you'd have to connect in Fort Lauderdale, and now you just, hey, Dagestan works.
Dagestan, I guess, yeah.
It's a country where the national sport is MMA. I want to say something.
The national sport is beating Jews.
Well, yes, Jew hunting is also huge.
It's very large.
But if I may, I think if you are Jewish and you're caught in Dagestan, because it's not a great vacation spot, but they do have nice. They have nice mountains.
They have their tourism campaign is better than the actual.
Yeah, and if you want to brush up on your takedown defense or your single leg, it's a good place to go. If you are in a situation like that and a mob in Dagestan comes at you and you're Jewish, what you want to do is throw books at them, and they will scatter the way mice do. I'm sorry, elephants do when they see mice. So that's what So it's kind of like with the leprechaun. If you throw shoes,
he has to cobble them.
He has to cobble.
It's a compulsion.
Yeah, and
like Dagestanis have to run away from books.
Well, in that situation,
yes, in that situation.
I don't know. I don't know if that's. I don't have the data on that, but I'm pretty sure.
There was a hotel, by the way, in Dagestan. That was searched for Jews by angry locals. They were just looking through. By the way, if you're a decent person in Dagestan and you have Jews in your hotel and angry Muslims, like don't tell them.
Yeah, you don't know. Maybe
we have Jews here.
Yeah, don't tell them. Like if someone, and by the way, that applies also in Dearborn. If you're in Lebanon, like if you're a decent person, even if you're a Muslim, but you don't want to see Jews killed, if they come like, you will tell me what every last Jew is. Don't.
No. Well, it was a George Soros-owned hotel, though. So, yeah. It's like, Jews on every floor.
Yeah. There's just a hologram hand.
Ding, ding. I think it's seriously... Yeah, I think it's seriously significant, though, that we live in 2023. Jews are actually having to hide in this country, being told not to go outside in Flatbush, Brooklyn.
But certainly everywhere in Islamic countries. I mean, think about that. They're looking for Jews in a hotel, and it turns out, by the way, they didn't find... They didn't find any. Well, they found a single one, but that's because all the other rooms were drafty.
He's a Jew! A Jew! Stop that Jew! Don't let him out!
Wow.
To those who are worried, they made it out.
He did make it.
Yes.
Only
he made it out, had a wonderful career.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So, Asteroid City...
By the way, they stormed this airport. There's other videos out there of them going up the escalators in this massive crowd looking for people, actually out on the tarmac next to planes. I think they ended up talking to one poor guy that they thought was a Jew. That I don't even know if he was or not. But like, this is literally like, hey, this is Germany in the 1930s, more so than I think we've ever seen outside of that time period. Like, I understand there's anti-Semitism. I understand there's isolated cases. But when they literally storm an airport, one of the most secure places in a country typically, They are looking for people to kill because they suspected there were people on this flight from Tel Aviv that were Jewish.
What's really bothersome, what's really weird and ironic is that typically throughout history, it was the Christians that killed the Jews, and they would go to Muslim countries because the Muslims would give them safe quarter because they were, quote unquote, people of the book. So that was typical. And now with this Hamas stuff, well, in recent history, it's the exact opposite.
Yeah, but those usually coincided with wars for land because they also killed more Christians than anyone else too. Like people don't realize that when you're talking about the Inquisition. The same thing is if you look at Islam, though, they just at a certain point they want to kill all of them. You either convert, you're subjugated, or everybody gets killed. That is the rule. That is the law of Islam. That is what they call dimitude. So Dagestan's not the only place, by the way, where people are protesting against Israel or committing mass crimes against Jews right now. And remember when they said anti-Semitic crimes are on the rise because Donald Trump.
Of course it was his fault.
I hope if you're out there, Jews, remember, and this has nothing to do with the conflict. Again, not one American body. I think that we should not be funding both sides of the war, but from the standpoint of moral support, kill every single last member of Hamas with prejudice, no quarter, no mercy, period. Okay, that is my stance. That being said, hey, Jews in the United States, are you starting to get the picture? When people say, oh, fringe, no, hold on a second. Find me anyone in the RNC, a mainstream conservative. Sure, there's some neo-Nazis out there, but you're talking single-digit percentages of a single-digit percentage.
Right.
You have the entire squad in our House of Representatives, not to mention other leftists who simply are espousing anti-Jew rhetoric right now. Let's just be clear about that. Do you see the difference? I hope that people do, because I know that Jews in the United States largely vote left, and that's because a lot of them aren't practicing. But around the world, and largely the Islamic world, wherever they are a majority, there have been massive protests in support, they will say in support of the people of Palestine. But I have not seen included massive condemnation of Hamas. It's alarming when you see what's happening across the globe.
That's terrifying.
It's Turkey. Look how big that is. Uh-oh. Germany's entered the chat.
Oh, geez. Largest Islamic country in the world, folks. Indonesia.
Yep. They also had a record number of church burnings in Indonesia and Malaysia. They were jockeying for position for a couple of years there under Obama. And
I feel like it's safe to say that Jews are not worried about white supremacy right now.
Some are.
Yeah, maybe, but it seems like the larger threat.
Yeah, some still try and keep that narrative alive. Find me any rally. The closest you can find is Charlottesville, and it was a bunch of losers it was a handful of losers with tiki torches and one guy with a Dodge Challenger.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is across the entire Islamic world. You had an entire airport run over in the tiny country of Dagestan, to be clear. It's not even close. I saw a note was handed to you.
There's so many instances of this, but right now one of them is from October 27. Pro-Hamas protests forced Jewish students to barricade in Copper Union in New York. This is here in the United States that this is happening. Cornell right now, I think there was tons of anti-Semitic stuff going on at that university. You can look at a timeline where the university is doing really bad things, just like we saw from Harvard where students are saying this. Posters are being torn down. People are very pro-Hamas. It all stems from Israel defending itself. Period.
And also, why are people not talking about how Hamas has no interest in a free Palestine, quote unquote?
No.
The minute that the Palestinians are actually a prosperous, free people, they're out of power. Their power relies, and Iran's power relies on chaos and the misery of the Palestinian people.
Yeah.
You take that away, and they don't have anything to fight against.
So we have this abroad, but let's look here in the United States.
Yeah.
We have a montage here of Palestinian sympathizers. And again, if you listen to some of these, it would be one thing if they were to say, we absolutely completely condemn Hamas and terrorism outright.
Right.
But you never really, I shouldn't say never, you rarely see that. They usually go, what do you expect if you're being occupied?
Right.
Mm-hmm. Also, why isn't Hamas considered an occupation? Let's be clear. In other words, you can condemn the occupation of Israel if that's how you view it, but it's also an occupation if you look at the way Hamas shoots their own citizens trying to flee. So here in the United States are some protests for you to watch, pro-Palestine Hamas. And of course, cities like Los Angeles, New York City.
It's just a lazy chant.
Lazy. None of them have ever lived there. None of them have no idea. They have no idea what it's like to live under Hamas.
Grand Central Station.
Jeez. Okay, they said fight like hell. Where are they going to be drafted?
Oh, talking about one solution and
wow.
Jews, that's a bad idea.
Yeah,
Jews you can't hide.
Yeah.
And one state solution.
And one solution sounds like final solution to me.
Look
at this.
No. If you guys think that seems... There was a Jew in that car, so it's fine.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Unbelievable.
There's Jew in that car. This is the United States. This is the United States. Yeah. Let's put this in context here. Again, it happens anywhere in the Islamic world where you talk about women being victim blamed, right, if they're sexually assaulted. Well, what were you wearing?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think happens in a place like Lebanon? What do you think happens in Iran if there's a hate crime against a Jew? It's, well, were you looking particularly Jewy that day?
It's funny. It doesn't look Jewish.
So when we are remember, anyone who calls for a ceasefire, they go beyond that saying, Jews you can't hide, one state solution. They're saying the quiet part out loud.
Yes.
Right? What they usually try and say out loud is ceasefire, which means allow the rape, allow the bombing, allow the tunneling underneath your cities to target and bomb record number of innocent women and children, and then ceasefire. Anyone who says those words ceasefire is advocating for the killing, raping, kidnapping of innocent people and supporting terrorism.
Heil Hitler.
Seriously, guys, calm it down. Ceasefire. I'm not going to tell you again. Well, okay, I'm telling you again. I'm not going to tell you a third time.
It just...
You got off easy.
Yeah, it just doesn't work. You don't get to say ceasefire. You don't say, let's not punish the crime. Look, wherever Islam achieves or maintains power, this is what happens. Violations of human rights happen. That's one of those things that I know that we had Rashida Tlaib, who had the rainbow flag next to the Palestinian flag.
Which, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I know what you're thinking. Hey, you know what? They'll get there. They're going to make progress. No. Or even if you take an exception like Iran in the 70s where you saw some women in a one piece, just give it a decade and a half. Then women are killed for not wearing headscarves. You look, of course, Afghanistan, right? You have the Taliban. They said, we're going to have a lot of women. We're going to have women in schools. Remember they said that? We're going to have women in schools. We're going to have scholarships, kind of like a Pell Grant, but for titties. And then they barred women from going to school at all. They have death by stoning, right? You can be buried under a wall. If you go to Qatar, hey, clock boy, Qatar.
Wait, buried under a wall. We kind of skimmed past that.
What? I mean, I don't even know why. Just bury them anywhere.
Just alive. Well, that seems cruel.
I don't necessarily know if they do it alive.
I mean, otherwise, what is the point?
It's part of their policy is doing it under a wall. It's like, just dig a ditch.
How many walls do they have?
In Qatar, remember Clockboy went to Qatar because he couldn't deal with, he sued Ben Shapiro for questioning his Philips alarm clock put in a suitcase, and then he claimed that he was being persecuted. So he went to Qatar,
man.
Where, by the way, they punished sodomy with 1 to 3 years in prison.
That's just cruel.
They're certainly not at the point of children on puberty blockers, let alone same-sex marriage.
Yeah.
You're lucky if you're not buried under a wall.
Alive, confirmed.
Yeah. And if Muslims have sex and they're convicted outside of marriage, and by the way, I think it's a good thing to wait until marriage. I think it's a good thing to not be a lying whore. That being said, I don't believe that, like Qatar, you should be sentenced to flogging or the death penalty.
Well, hold on. Why the difference? What makes it go from flogging to, you're now getting the death
because
penalty?
They want
Depends on how many times you orgasmed.
Yes, they want to keep the threat of it.
Yes, and also I
think...
are
you going to get death penalty or flogging?
Yes. But in this country, especially California, you could lose your house and be stuck with alimony for the rest of your life. So flogging,
that's not.
There are a lot of guys.
You'll take the flogging, but if you're messing the pull up and you're like, she really liked this guy, we have to get rid of him.
Yes.
20 minutes? No.
I didn't think that. Penalty. That's like when I was a kid and I wouldn't finish, and my mom would say, like, there's starving kids in China when they're flogging a guy for committing adultery. They're going, hey, do you know there are men in America who have to pay child support for 18 years?
I'll take the flogging. Take it. Yeah, you're going to use a belt or a branch?
Yeah, and by the way, women have even been sentenced in Qatar, just to give you an idea, for engaging in premarital sex when they're raped. If you go to Turkey,
that's right,
which is supposedly a more secular country, that's what people pointed to for a very long time. I mean, I've been doing this on YouTube, for example, since 2006, 2009, more political. I remember when everyone used to say, well, there are places like Turkey. And again, you just fast forward a few years, right? On Saturday, Erdogan called Israel occupiers, and he talked about the fire that they would not be able to avoid in places like.
And let me just really quickly, in front of hundreds of thousands of people in a pro-Hamas, they don't split hairs on Palestine and Hamas. A pro-Hamas gathering, he said that they could enter this war at night, and Israel would never see it coming. Like, this is a guy who is actively riling up a crowd of people who don't need any additional fuel being thrown on that fire. They're ready to go now anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I don't know if in Saudi Arabia, you know what, Mission Control is going to have you do this. I'm going to go by rote here. Saudi Arabia, women weren't allowed to drive. Maybe they changed that relatively recently. Deaths for Christians across the Islamic world. Apostasy are subject to dhimmi, meaning that if you're not Muslim, you have to pay a poll tax. You have a curfew. There are certain areas where you're not allowed to visit. Depending on the Islamic country, you're not allowed to own land that's waterfront. There are different property taxes. Of course, gays being killed through death penalty. That's a matter of policy. Women, of course, in many countries not being allowed to vote, and then they'll tell you that they have a lot of female representatives, or women not allowed to drive, women not allowed to, there are certain jobs that they're just not allowed to have. Things that don't seem like that big of a deal when you compare it to the murder and burning alive of gays, but these are standard anywhere in the Islamic world. And here you're bitching if there aren't enough scholarships for women to get into STEM programs that they didn't qualify for anyway. And these are the same people out there saying we need affirmative action in the United States. Go try and explain affirmative action anywhere in the Islamic world. Anywhere in the Islamic world, there are too many Arabic or whatever it is, Arabic Muslims at this school, and we need more Buddhists, or we need more white Christians. We need more Africans, black Africans, not South Africans.
Different.
So Charlize Theron, she really does it for me. But my point is, go try and explain affirmative. So you demand affirmative action here, whereas it is second-class citizenry everywhere in the Islamic world that they have achieved the status of running a government. Find me any exception. That's the issue. Not that there's a small minority. Not that there's a small minority of Muslims in the United States, and so, they're mostly peace. They don't have a choice.
Right.
They have to be peaceful, loving Muslims because we live in a country where people have rights. I get that they're being eroded, but not to the degree that we're discussing here in the Islamic world. And then when you look even at small areas in Europe that become majority Muslim. First off, remind me, I want to go back to Dearborn, and we can have them bring up an old clip that I did in 2014. So if we look at places in Europe, so we've gone from Islamic countries. Everyone clear?
Yep.
Okay. Now we go to, little, I guess, pockets. Marseille, Stockholm, London, right? These places where you have a bunch of, you have Islamic sects or sectors. There are no-go zones.
Yeah.
There are no-go zones in London, in Stockholm. Remember the rape in Cologne? On New Year's Eve, this happened. There was such massive migrant rape in Cologne, Cologne, Germany, right? Is Cologne, Germany, or I was getting? What was the other? There was a massive rape in Sweden too.
Sweden,
was too, yeah.
Yeah. Wait, no, but it's Cologne, Germany.
Yes, but I think Sweden also
had a mass rape event.
They were not publishing the details,
right?
And this is just a fact because the vast majority of the rapes were from immigrants.
No, they were not only from immigrants. We wrote about this on the website. You can go read it on louderwithcrowder.com. Type in Champagne. They handed out, this is New Year's Eve, such a mass rape event. They handed out do not rape leaflets with actual images and diagrams of don't do this.
Oh, that'll stop
Maybe
you.
hold hand. Yeah. And we were fact-checked.
This pamphlet makes a difference.
This article,
I was feeling kind of rapey, and now that I got a pamphlet in my hand.
This article went viral. From our website. We didn't have the exclusive. We just happened to be the people who covered it at that point. We got fact-checked by Reuters, I believe, or by PolitiFact, and they said that the leaflets, this was not the first printing of the leaflets. They were used for another event. Therefore, it was false. But they handed out the don't rape leaflets in Cologne.
The very fact that they exist in the first place.
Dearborn, Dearborn, the amount of child abductions that take place in Dearborn is, you know why? Because women, a lot of them don't get married by the state. They get married in a mosque. Do you know what a man needs to say in Islam to get divorced? Just talik, boom, you're gone. We had a woman, I believe, from Silver Heights, Michigan, who was on the show. She had to be anonymous because she was hiding from her husband who tried to kidnap their children. We had this in Montreal all the time. You would look at the missing children's reports. They wouldn't fit on the milk carton, so they would put it on the side of soda machines.
But explain that. Wow. That's because you, as the father of your children, you take them. You have full custody.
You just take them. You get to do whatever you want. And divorce is literally say talik, 3 times, boom, done. That's also what allows them the loophole to have a temporary marriage and get a whore on the side. So this is something, you can look at what happens in Dearborn. You can look at what happens in these small pockets in Europe, and then, of course, always look to what happens in Islamically run countries. I know what you're saying. You're saying, well, hold on a second, this is hyperbole. No. Give me one exception of a majority Muslim nation that has not committed gross violations of basic human rights. By the way, in a selective manner for non-Muslims that's lasted more than 10 years. Ever. Go ahead.
I think just in the interest of being fair before you get criticized, Jordan is pretty moderate because they are essentially, I think, Sufi Muslims.
Well, they're pretty moderate.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah, but I think here's what I
they weren't so moderate when they were attacking Israel.
But that's what I want to go back to something that's really important in terms of Hamas ceasefire in Palestine, which these people never talk about when they're protesting. It's like we can get into the Islam thing, but do you think doesn't it count? Doesn't it mean something where you're calling for a ceasefire when it took them 2 years to plan what they did on October 7th? 2 years. Yeah. That was an act of war for 2 years.
It's an act of war. I think that's
just
the
was,
best way
but
to
it was.
But my point is yes, and we've talked. But the issue is the Islamic world is going, hey, we get it because they just hey, you talk about Jordan. Why doesn't Jordan take them? Yeah. Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, Egypt, Turkey.
The population is.
None of you, because and by the way, it's also a part of not all Islam, but just to be clear, this is why Piers Morgan can never get a straight answer. He has these Hamas representatives. By the way, we still have an invite. I don't know if we checked the Proton mail. You can come on the show alongside a member of the IDF. I would love to have you both hash it out. Maybe we can solve world peace here. I don't know, but I'm not holding my breath. The reason he can't get a clear answer, there are a lot of Muslims who write there's taqiyya, which means they're allowed to lie. They're allowed to lie. It's a part of their religion. Now,
100%.
Some people will argue and say, well, you're only allowed to lie. And this is in certain sects of Islam, and not all of them. It's not even all of Shia or Sunni Islam, just to be clear. And sometimes there is some overlap. You're only allowed to lie if it's your life at stake. But then there are a lot of Muslims, probably to the tally of at least tens of millions, maybe not 198 million who support violence against civilians. We have that poll from last week. But at least the tens of millions who also believe will not only lie for you to not just lose your life, but essential living amenities. Then you're also allowed to lie if it will convert people to Islam. So let me ask you, would lying about the terrorist activity that would turn people off because it's a negative PR campaign, it's not a good look. Would lying about that qualify as bringing people to Islam, as tricking them into Islam? Do you understand what Sharia law is? This is also the one place where you're not seeing this, not supporting it at all. Just to be clear, communist China, bad. But Chinese Muslims, you know why? Not because it's just a religion, but because there's a very real political threat from Islam. Right. It is a political prescription. When you look at Islam, there is a political prescription for how laws work. It's basically Schoolhouse Rock. Schoolhouse Rock, I'm just a bill, only with killing Jews and terrorists. Yeah. They tell you what kind of laws you need to use to govern a truly Islamic state pleasing to Allah. And that requires subjugation, conversion, or death. Now, so those are your three choices under Sharia law. Death, obviously, it's not a crowd favorite.
Right, no.
You have conversion, okay, and then you can just, I guess, lie and say, and subjugation. What does that come with? If you guys know what dhimmitut is? That includes a poll tax, that includes a curfew, it includes a whole laundry list of do's and don'ts for people who aren't Muslim if you want to live in this society. And by the way, it's just like someone walking backward and putting down landmines so they can execute you at a moment's notice. That is every Islamic nation at some point since the beginning. Now, we can point to some Christians. We can point to the Inquisition. You can point to, if you want to point to the Crusades and not acknowledge that they were retaliatory action in the face of what was going on at that point. But you can't say every single group of Christians. You can't say every single place where groups of majority Christians congregated, did they kill everyone who was not Christian? You can't. It's not an argument you can make. It's not even an argument you can make for Buddhists. It's not an argument you can make for Scientologists. It's not an argument you can make for Hindus. One, Islam. And that's why you're seeing it across the entire Islamic world and pockets of liberalism in the United States who they're just the crony. They're the toady. They don't even realize. They think that they'll be killed last. Not if you're a genderqueer, blue-headed, pansexual, lesbian chain gang freak.
Chain gang?
Well, that's one of the biggest problems with how the media is covering it and how the administration seems to be. Yeah, exactly. How the administration seems to be handling this. They're not acknowledging what really drives these people in these parts of the world. Now, you're right. Left unfettered around the world, if you truly are a believer, not just nominally Muslim, not just kind of going through the motions Muslim, because they're nominal Christians too, you're going this direction. This is what the natural outcome is taking over. And basically, the only reason that the poll tax goes away is because they finally ban it and you're killed or converted. So they take that option away eventually, and it's prescribed in their book. And it's not God doing it like, oh, the Christians. No. God judges because he is righteous to be able to do that. Not saying, hey, you, Muslim warrior, go and kill the Jew that's hiding behind this stone over here, this tree over here, because they'll cry out and tell you that stuff is happening. That's the problem when we look at these conflicts and try to evaluate them on economic terms or try to evaluate them on land terms with Palestine. They don't care about that. This is much bigger for them, and they're happy to play that game in public, and then behind the scenes, they have no idea what's going on. They have no idea. We will never stop going after Jews, is what Hamas says. We will never stop going after these people. I don't care what they give us until every last one is dead. It's in their charter.
Let me ask you
period.
this. Okay, let's put it this way. Very different situation. Let's say, and this is where I think people are misinterpreting the Israel-Hamas conflict, Israel-Palestine conflict. And I've heard people say that it's weapons manufacturers that are owned by Jews who want this war. And by the way, I get it that the military-industrial complex, there are people who profit from war. To believe that the Israeli government allowed 1,400 people to be killed so that they could give out another weapon, to me is, okay. No, it does. It does start with the eradication of Jews from Islam. And by the way, Christians are next. Like you just said, the dimitude goes away because you've had your time. If you haven't converted, it's like, good news. The poll tax is now going to zero today. Oh, wow, great. The bad news is you're going to be burned alive and thrown from a rooftop. So let me give you two different situations, and this will give you a different idea of conflict. There is battles for land take place, resources. Right. That's why I always say when people say, oh, what, just because you've been banned from speaking publicly? Well, people have fought wars for less. That's your livelihood. Only a lot of us don't have territory like we used to as an agrarian society. You have a spot of digital land. So when it's taken away from you, your ability to speak, your ability to make a living online, wars have been fought for less. I understand that. And that doesn't necessarily indicate a battle of good and evil. Sometimes people just need resources because they need to live. It would be like coming home. You come home, your house is ransacked. Okay? Your television's gone, computers, jewelry, all of that. And you make your way up to the bedroom and someone's still there. And you see that it's a scared, poor kid. Still could have made better decisions, right? There are other options. I'm not giving him a pass. But you see that he's scared and he has maybe a handful of your jewelry. He looks at you and says, if you just and jumps out the window and he runs away. Okay, he takes your crap, he runs away. All right, that's different. You're probably not going to chase him down and kill him. Now, let's contrast that. You come home. This is the kind of conflict we're dealing with. You come home. Your house has been ransacked. You walk up to your bedroom, and at gunpoint, he ties you down to a chair and says, I'm going to come back when your whole family is here and kill all of them. Remember me. I'm never going to stop until everyone in this house is dead. You deal with those two people very differently. Yeah. And one is an accurate depiction of how these Islamists believe they are to live, how they are called to act by God. It's, I'm coming back and killing every last one of you in the Lipschitz household. Then, when I'm done with that, I'm going down to the McDonald's down the street. I'm going to their household because they're Christians. Once we're done with all of the Jews, Christians next. Because it is a worldview, a religion of global. When people talk about the doomsday cults of Christians, and they're stupid,
right? Yeah,
where they're trying to invite Doomsday. They'll even talk about that with Israel, right? They'll talk because of the Messiah. Do you realize that all of Islam is a doomsday cult? That really we're only going to reach the end when every single Muslim is converting every person on earth? You need to constantly struggle for a global caliphate? And maybe not everyone does that. But 198 Muslims in the world think it's okay to sometimes kill civilians, and at least 54 million Muslims, according to these polls from Pew Research, say it's okay to kill civilians most of the time. You deal with that very differently than a pickpocket. So let me ask you where you see this going, how you see this ending. And again, I would love to hear if there is an exception. Bryan says Jordan. I think he's wrong.
I think that the biggest challenge for Islam has always been can you actually have separation of church and state? It is not compatible.
No, it's not prescribed.
It's
in
a
their religion.
blueprint for how to run your entire society.
It's a theocracy. It's absolutely set up as a theocracy, period. It's not set up to coexist with any other thing governing their people. It is a theocracy.
That is the biggest challenge.
We have to get going. We've been going late, so I know you're at Good Nights in November. Go to bryancallen.com to see that. But I know. We'll go to bryancallen.com because I have to hit tomorrow the Halloween Spooktacular contest. By the way, your costume is wildly offensive.
Am I going as karate
tomorrow? Send in your.
Send it in.
I have a hiccup that's hurting my chest. I just tried to swallow it.
Oh no!
I think I'm having a heart attack. So
you'll be okay.
Instagram or Twitter.
Yeah.
Picture with your mug. Use the hashtag Spooktacular. Do we want to get into Mike Johnson here or do we want to play hipster or hobo?
Well,
we have a full segment on who Mike Johnson is, and then we went
let's
late.
Do hipster or hobo.
We'll do hipster or hobo.
We'll do Mike Johnson maybe tomorrow or the next day. He'll still be unknown to most people then.
He still will be unknown to most people. But the more I learn about him, the more I still don't think about him. But
interesting, yeah.
But I like what I have learned. So if you're watching on YouTube, you shouldn't be. If you are right now on Rumble, we are going to continue. Just hit that button, click it, boom, join Mug Club. None of this happens. None of it happens without you in Mug Club, period. We don't make any money on YouTube. Very few live sponsor reads. And I don't know if you know this, but we don't get any of that big Jew money.
No.
Say Jewish.
Jewish. What?
Jew money. YouTube piss off.